everyone, welcome. My name is Heather Havenwood, and welcome to Like a Boss, helping you rise to the top and educating you through influencers, entrepreneurs, and badasses like you. Woo! Okay, so we have someone on the line today. It's going to be kind of an interesting conversation because we're going to be talking about Celtic goddesses. So that's cool, right? It's not something normally I talk about on this show. And we're going to be talking about how actually I would think the changes of the universe are completely changing right now and how we as women are rising to the top. And I believe the Celtic goddesses has something to do with it. But I'm going to be asking our expert because I don't know. I did have read a little bit of her book, The Legends of the Grail, Stories of Celtic Goddesses. I'm on page 84. And I'm going to be talking about my experience while I'm reading the book as well. So that's kind of cool. I don't usually always do that. So that's fun. So Anne, thank you for coming here today.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So, okay, we're going to do this now. I'm going to tell you who Ayn Cates Sullivan is. She is an award-winning best-selling author focusing on mythology and folklore of the modern age. Dr. Sullivan has obtained her BA with honors at Hollins University, her master's and doctorate in literature from Columbia University in King's College, London. And she lives in Virginia with her husband and a variety of pets. Now, I got to be honest. I'm not a big person on everyone that has 1,000 degrees. I'm like an antichrist on that. And I acknowledge people that have like huge degrees, like that's great. But I'm like, what have they done? Like that's how I am, and I'm kind of weird that way. I think it came from though, and a date I had years ago, literally first date, and the guy said he's a master's in entrepreneurship, but he's never started a business, and so he's out there in Oxford. Teaching people how to build a business, but he's never done it himself. I kind of have that thing about people with like all these degrees. I acknowledge you have them. I just think it's interesting, that people go through all these degrees and like, what have they done since then? But you've done a lot. It's very different. I want to start with your book, Legends of the Grail. Coming from a huge Ivy League, you have a ton of experience and you've obviously spent a lot of time in your education. Why? Why did you write this book and publish it? And a few others.
Well, I'm going to tell you about the degrees first of all, because I actually really love education and I really believe in it. And I spent quite a bit of time at Oxford too.
Oh, nice! Yeah.
But anyway, I grew up in this little town, population 400 in Fincastle, Virginia, and I happened to be a very good writer, and I won a lot of awards. I was always getting a kind of award for something, and because of these variety of degrees, I was eventually given a fellowship to Columbia University. Now, I was the first person in my family to go to Ivy League school. Nobody was particularly impressed, the fact that I wanted to do this. They really thought I should stay home and do business and, work. We have nursing homes, so I really should work in the nursing home business, which creates a lot of money. It's great. But I loved literature and I really wanted to go do it and had no idea how I'd be able to make a living doing it, but I did it. So I went to New York City. It was amazing. I met every major writer that was alive. I had the time of my life. And then I applied to King's College London and was given an overseas research award. So I got a full ride. I got to live in England. I got married. So I wound up living there for 11 years. And I would say, the university, the degrees have been wonderful for me. I would go to Oxford, they'd sharpen my pencils, and here's this blonde, sitting in these old musty libraries, actually great. And then I would go, I'd go to Emory or New York Public Library, and I felt really honored. People love the fact that I was going back and collecting this folklore. And if you think about it for a minute, I don't know if you have any Irish background or not, but yet these stories that I write about, they weren't really considered that important for a long time. The Greek and Roman stories were considered important. The goddesses were all lovely. We had these lunar goddesses, but I loved it when I got to walk through the west coast of Ireland. And I found that there were solar goddesses. There were goddesses that were all about brilliancy. They were about thinking your own way, having your own thoughts, making your own life. And if any of the heroes wanted to be a hero, they had to go and find the goddess of sovereignty. They had to jump across a ravine and learn some magic. And I thought this was really terrific. And that's where I wrote a book about it.
So that's really cool. I want to go down that road a little bit. I was reading, and one of the things I was recognizing in my reading was, one, I've never heard of these goddesses before. Like you said, I think you just said it, which I think this is beautiful. I love it. The Greek and Roman. That's why I grew up Greek and Roman heroes,
Yes.
gods, heroes, men, right? All right. This was never taught about the goddesses and the how you say that? The
The heroines. No,
heroines.
yeah.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. Like, tell me, I mean, I'm only gone halfway. Like I said, I'm just keep showing the book. So I'm like, I'm only gone halfway.
Yeah.
So, but tell me more, just kind of give people an understanding of these goddesses. And you obviously were so touched, moved, and inspired that you literally wrote 2 books on it. So just kind of take us down that road about the goddesses.
So it's sort of fun when I was given the Overseas Research Award.
Mm-hmm.
I could have the award if I did my work on somebody called Lady Gregory, and I didn't know who she was, but I said yes. So anyway, it turns out that Lady Gregory was the patron of a poet named W.B. Yeats. So this is the early 1900s, and she had decided it was very important to go around and collect the folklore of Ireland and bring it back to the people. And she was royalty, so she had some power. So she was able to go to Trinity College. And the thing is, if you do go into these colleges, they do have, they do change the world. They can change the world in certain ways.
Yeah, no, they can.
She
For
went
sure.
to,
A lot of power.
they can. They do. So she goes to Trinity College and she says, look, I've gone around on my pony and trap, and I've collected the folklore of our people.
Mm-hmm.
This should be in our university. We have a whole section here. And because she was who she was, this started. Now, before the Easter Uprising, if you told these, be shot and killed. So, so she had to learn Gaelic, go around and collect something that was dying out. And so the first story in the book, it comes from they call it myth, used to be history. It's the granddaughter of Noah. You probably read it, right? Wasn't allowed to board the ark.
Yeah, the granddaughter. So I want to share. Yeah, so I just want to share my view of reading this story and growing up in Houston and Baptist and the whole Noah thing, and how even in the quote unquote Noah story that I don't even think they talked about his wife. And then here you are talking about a granddaughter, right?
Yes.
And I sitting here reading this book, and here's what my thought. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sitting here on, Friday night reading this and going, is this real? Is this like a true story? Or is this really truly like made up? Like now I have you. Like, is it true? Is it like not put in the Bible, or is it like a myth? Is it myth or history?
Well, they blend a lot. You have to understand when you're doing this sort of work. So the Liber Gabala for a long time was considered history, a little bit like Gregory of Monmouth's History of the Kings of England. So it was considered his, and then it became a myth. People, no, there was no in Ireland. It doesn't really exist. It's all baloney. And what's happened now is really interesting with all the DNA testing. They're finding out that it might very well be a fact. So it seems like there probably was a goddess tradition, and she probably did start it. So what part is exactly? It's a long time ago. So things blur. But we know for sure is that in that part of the world, men and women were both considered equals, and women had a lot of power. Very exciting.
So oh God, I'd love to say when did that all end, but I don't think that's really an important question, right? So
it is an important question.
Okay.
I would say it ended at 5,125 years ago. And it was when the Tuatha De Danann, that you have the story of Danu in the story, and when the Tuatha De Danann went underground, it was when the Milesians came in, and all of a sudden there was a warring faction going on. So they started at that point. The feminine energy that had been alive and well on this planet started to go underground at that point. Now it didn't go fully underground until, well, in Ireland when St. Patrick showed up. He was a wonderful character, but he did destroy the goddess temples. in England, in the other book I have, which takes place in Britain, Heroines of Avalon, about the 5th century. It's about the 5th century with well, the Roman invasion, and then about the 5th century, the goddess traditions start to die out. So if you can go back to those early time periods and just find those stories, it's some of it's intuitive. I go to these sacred sites, and in some places you actually crawl on your belly into these old cairns, and these cairns are older than the pyramids. They're ancient places. So you crawl in, there's nobody there because people don't know the stories. You crawl in and you put your back up against the stone and you dream with what's there. So I would go in knowing the history or the myth. I would go in and then I would feel it. What's correct? I would write it in that place. So what was important to me is when I was growing up, it was, I'm at King's College London, I'm going to all these places. There were lots of busts of white men, which was great. I was the only, one of the only females walking around. And I was wondering, what's my place? Do I belong here? Do my stories matter? Does the feminine matter? Do I matter? I'm so inspired. Not only do I matter, literally in my DNA, they're my lineage. These are the women, the queens, the goddesses of sovereignty that have fed me throughout centuries, and continue to feed me. So they're very inspiring, I believe, for women and men too, to know that there's a healthy feminine lineage back there that we can tap into.
What do you think is happening in today's, not society, but energetically with the feminine? Can you speak to that?
Well, the reason I said 5,125 years is because now we're actually back at a very similar time when feminine can actually express herself again on the planet. It's the first time in a very long time. So you could say, according to the Mayans and so forth, it's the beginning of a golden age. Now, and you can say, are you making this up? If you go to the old sacred sites now, and if people believe in dowsing, you can also use scientific instruments to measure the energy on the stones. These old sacred sites has tripled in size. People know that there's something going on right now. There's some kind of awakening going on. These sacred sites are on. The feminine energy is active. There's a lot going on the planet. And so it's up to us, in the old days, I love the bards, the druids, and the ovates. You had these old spiritual people that helped maintain balance on the planet. And these people, they weren't, I don't know how much money they made out, it probably didn't even exist, but they trained for 20 years. So they knew of the people so they could inspire, so that they could help us move forward in ways in which we could live in harmony and balance with each other. We could do our win-win solutions. We could help each other thrive. And we got away from that. We became arrogant, self-centered, we sort of became narcissistic, which is okay. That was what we had to do. Now as a culture, and that's what these stories remind us, as a culture we have to understand each other's differences, learn from each other, and then grow collectively.
So what does that mean today? Let's go in today. So, and I just want to make sure I heard you right, that you're saying that some of these old structures, the energy, they can read the energy, and the energy is now more feminine. Is that correct? And it's increased?
Well, the energy itself, has tripled in size, and so it would be both masculine and feminine energy, but they're balanced. They're equally balanced.
So yes. The energy at these sites has increased, triple.
Yes.
Okay, and just so you know, I'm going to repeat some of this stuff because like you're going really in and out on you're like la, la, so.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm just going to try to put the pieces as much as I can. I'm direct. I have a direct 1T line. So, and your video it out a little bit, just so you know. Okay. So, so what I'm hearing you say, because it's really important, right? I've been hearing a lot about feminine energy. I personally have really tapped into my feminine energy, but there's like a fear, I don't know about myself, I'm gonna speak for myself and maybe some people that I know, of like kind of I wouldn't even call it, like I feel like a breaking up or a fight against the patriarchal energy, talking energy here. So what would you say to that? How would you speak to that? Or how would you, someone like myself who's kind of diving into the feminine energy personally, how would you say how to deal with that? I don't, because in my lifetime, in my lineage of my mom and grandmother, great grandmother, they haven't, it was pretty patriarchal. You know what I mean? I don't have like a story of some grandmother who's like, she was just such a fighty girl and she did all these. I don't have any of that. It was patriarchal, 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 patriarchal. Do what the man says, do what the man says, do what the man says, do what the man says. Forever. I'm really only one of the first lineage of our entire family that I know of in 7 generations even been saying, I want to start a business. Like, that's weird. I was told by my uncle years ago, my mom was still around, that said, women don't do that. This is like not like 1950s. So for myself, going up against that patriarchal conversation, I don't really feel like I want to fight it, but I do want to, and I don't even know how to speak that.
Well, it's really an important question. I mean, I understand to a certain extent because I grew up in the South, and my grandparents they were homemakers, which is lovely, right?
Yeah, which is lovely, yeah.
And so I was one of the first ones to break out and go get a degree and teach abroad, and I've taught all over the world, and so I did do something different. But my inspiration couldn't really come from those women, even though I loved them and I really appreciated the support, that the love and the support they always gave me. I had to look elsewhere to find those stories. And what I found early, and I think this is why I really went on the quest. So I was in my 20s, I'm in England, I'm top of my game, really top of my game. And at the time I worked as a model too. So I was making a good living, and Pinnacle, top university and so forth. And I felt so empty. I just was so depressed. I just really couldn't figure out how to get through the day. I thought something's really wrong here, because there's no reason for me to feel this way. And I had the same, fight. I had to fight. I felt like I had to fight my way.
Like
right?
The fight. And I don't want to fight. I did that in my 20s, similar too. So I just want to say that. And I'm like, I don't want to fight. How do I win here?
Right.
And that's an interesting word, but without the fight, like.
Exactly. So when I started to go to these places and started to have these experiences, what scared me at first, of course, was, oh my gosh, everybody's going to think I'm a witch. Because there's a whole history of burning, of ostracizing women that looked into these things. Oh my God, the goddess, this is so I was worried about it for a while. But what happened was that I fell so in love, and that's why in the very beginning I said it's important to say that I have a degree, because I studied these things in depth. Then I went and felt them too. I also felt them, and I realized that what they offer us, it was taken away, with the witch burnings and all of this. Our female archetypes were taken away, and Christianity did have a lot to do with it. We had hundreds and hundreds of goddess archetypes that we could work with, and all of a sudden we can either be a virgin or a whore. Doesn't really work. And then you find somebody like Bridget, and you're, oh my gosh, she shines her light in her own way. She doesn't need a man. In fact, Bridget's kind of funny. When a men would come in and they wanted to date her, she'd pull her eye out and she'd do this and stick it back in. They'd run away. So Bridget, but she was the light of civilization, and they've worshipped, they've lit candles to her, and this goddess for some people say 2,000 years. So here's this deep lineage, a very deep lineage of a feminine connection that we can tap into, all of us. You with your beautiful blonde hair, Thanks. Bridget's bound to be one of your guides, your allies. And so what I feel when I go to these places and when I come back, I have these allies that are helping me, that help me work. And so, yes, I also have to make money and run the publishing company and deal with a lot of different things, but I have these allies that are behind me. And so I have this spark, this lovely spark that I can tap to whenever I need it.
So who's Bridget? Sorry, we'll make sure that listeners know what that is, who she is.
Okay, well, she appears in the last story of this book, although she's a little bit naughty in my book, but I love that. Most of us know Pallas Athena, Yes, in the Greco-Roman tradition. And so she would be the Irish and British version of her. So she is she's the goddess that holds the light for civilization. There's a flame. So in Kildare, which is just south of Dublin, there's a place. Kildare means of the people of the oaks, the place of the oaks. The Druids were all the people of the oaks, and so her flame was lit there and was kept on. So she was like sort of like one of the Vestal virgins, although she wasn't a virgin in the Celtic tradition. Is very different. It just means one who has the vessel that can hold the light. Another thing I like about the Celtic women is that they absolutely love sexuality. So they they love their men. So they're not fighting. They might fight alongside. They might go to battle with their men. In fact, Caesar said if you had to battle a Celtic man, it was one thing. But if his woman was fighting with him, you might as well go home. You'd never win. And so in this tradition, we look at it and we go, oh my goodness, we don't have to, as women, we don't have to become men in order to be in this culture. In fact, if we do that, this culture, we might really destroy this culture. What we really need to do, all of us, including the men, is find our feminine qualities and traits and live with those together. I mean, my husband is 99% Irish. And when I first met him, I said, my goodness, you're one of the old Munster kings. I know your lineage and your tradition. And this man who wants to go questing with me to find the next level of goddess within his own being. And I'll say something else about him. He's an ex-middle linebacker. He played with the Jets and Bears.
What?
Right? So he's a big king warrior, and he loves finding these parts within himself that he knows that we're missing. He goes back and he's like, you can feel his heart, he can feel love. He's actually writing a book called From Linebacker to Love. So we all need these things. We need to be able to connect and relate. And that's one of the things that I believe that these goddesses and the heroines, they teach us, is how to love again. And in business, business is relationship, really.
Yeah, let me ask you about that. So kind of going back to someone who's listening, going, well, I'm in my day-to-day business. I live in Georgia or Atlanta or New York, listening, going, well, I'm tapping into my feminine power. I'm tapping into that. But how do I not fight the patriarchal? How do I win in today's world? We do this thing called the patriarchal freaking American world. I mean, let's just be straight about it. And I don't want to fight it. Like, I don't feel like I want to fight that. And I think that that's one of the things I made a commitment to myself this year, and it's challenging for me. Believe me, I'm a fighter, is to what I call, drop the sword. But I don't want to be just run over. It's like this weird new space that I hope that maybe you can share with us. Maybe have you done it personally in today's world in 2019 and beyond, knowing this information from the goddesses from our past. How can they teach us to be in business, and how to be a goddess in business today, without the fight, but still win,
So what gives me hope, when I look at the newspaper, it's difficult. But what gives me hope is when I go back to some of these old sites. Not everybody can go to the ancient sites, but when I go to the ancient sites, now this is interesting. They've increased, they've increased triple, which means something's changing. And I think, some things coming from the grassroots. Patriarchy is over. The day of the patriarchy is over. And I do believe that the golden age is beginning. But what happens, of course, when one age ends, I mean, you can see it, like just reading through the book, there's 7 periods of time. I've got 33,000 years of history there, story. And you can see one age will end and another age begins. And so we're at the ending of a cycle of time. And so we've been in the patriarchal cycle for a long, long time. As that's ending and something else is beginning, of course there's going to be a lot of conflict. But our job isn't to engage the battle, because that's not going to help anybody. Our job is actually to feel the energy that's rising And when you really tap into that energy that's rising and you can feel what's being dreamt up, then you get to catch that wave. And that wave is exciting. And that wave, that new wave that's coming in, isn't about battle, it's actually about relationship. But in order to find that wave, yeah, it's like a surfer, you're out. You know, you have to feel it. You have to feel the wave. You have to give yourself, you know, to go on a heroine's quest, you have to give yourself a little bit of space. The heroine's a cup, right? So you got to empty your cup. She holds a sword. I mean, I think it's important to have your sword, because if somebody messes with you, yes, cut their head off, not literally, but you have to have your sword of truth. That's very important. You have to have your spear of justice too. But you also need to care for your body and open up to these new energies and these new waves, these presences. And we know, because all over the planet people are waking up. And what does that mean? All of a sudden people know that it's really to take care of this planet, to take care of each other. That's the wave that's rising, and it's got a lot of intelligence and presence in it. So what's wonderful, if you ever do get a chance to go to some of these old places and tap into those deities, those old energies, they're there. They're full of wisdom. They're full of cosmic intelligence. And it really doesn't matter where you are on the planet. You can be in Georgia, washing dishes and still tap into that energy. You can be changing diapers and tap into that energy, right? You can be anywhere. It doesn't matter. Because the in-world, we all have an in-world. We go to sleep at night, we dream, right? We all dream. But we can consciously dream too. And when we consciously dream, then we're the true entrepreneurs, because dreams and our visions are becoming reality on this earth, and we need it. We need the women to wake up. The Dalai Lama says it's West women that will save the world,
So so with that said, that's really interesting to me. With that said, I mean, how does one, in the Western world tap into, are you calling it like the goddesses? Or are you tapping into specific places that we're tapping into? When you say that, what exactly do you mean?
Well, both. I mean, if you go to certain places on the planet, they're deities that are associated with the land in those places. It's very strong. In some places, it's very strong.
Can you give us one of those names, like any of those places?
Well, there's a place called, the first place that I experienced it was the Chalice Well in Glastonbury in England, and I went looking for Mary Magdalene. That was where, because supposedly the cup was kept in that place, and I had a profound mystical experience there. So that was the first time that happened, and I went, oh, and then I started going to all these different wells and springs in different places and going, oh my goodness, there really are secrets that are held in the land, and this is the time where they're revealing themselves. They're starting to back to us, So now we can say, yes, let me know. We don't have to worry. We don't have to worry so much, because it is the time for the divine feminine. Even I think Dalai Lama also said the next Buddha is going to be a woman. So and it's our time to ride it. And if we can go back and read some of these old stories, see the thing is, like in the old days, you couldn't really be a bard. You couldn't really be a leader of our people unless you knew 250 stories of our people. Like, you needed to know the 250 stories so you didn't get lost. You go, oh, I'm feeling my red, I'm feeling my anger. Well, that just means, you need a little goddess strength. So if you go to some place like the Isle of Skye, then you can get in touch with the goddess Skaya, and you can feel that deity in the land. It's an intelligence that lives in the land. And she was somebody that I don't know if you read it in the story. Yeah, I don't think you quite got there. But if someone wanted to be a hero or heroine, they would have to jump across this ravine and meet her. And she would through initiations so that they would find their internal magic. And that's what this time is about. I think we're being squeezed so that we go in, we find our in world. And when we find our in world and our own gnosis, our own knowing, we're able to tap in. We find our own guidance. Then you can get through anything, right? Any corporate structure, any business deal, any family dynamic. You close your eyes, you tune in, you have your own, in the Welsh tradition, it's called the gleithiosa. You have your own shining brow. You tap in for a minute, and you have your power and you have your answers. It's quick. It's quick, it's exciting, it's easy. but it is actually literally a practice. It is something that like when we wake up in the morning out of our dream state, we have to go, I want to stay connected. A lot of people say higher self. I want to stay connected to my higher self. Let me stay connected to my wisdom, and then move from that spot. Because you can also wake up in the morning and just get into your problems. And so that's a choice we have each day. Yeah.
It's like I want
So
to
that's
stay
the practice.
connected to my wisdom, stay connected to my higher self.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay. I can talk about this forever, and I'm looking at the time too. So you also have a book publishing business, an independent book publishing business, is that correct?
I do. I
Cool.
do.
Cool. When did you start that?
There was a reason behind it. When I brought these stories out, I had been in traditional publishing. I worked for Kingfisher Books. I Americanized encyclopedias. But when I came to the United States and I was telling the publishers about, I introduced Celtic mythology idea. They said, oh, nobody will read it. Nobody will read these stories. And so I forgot about it, but I was telling this, I told a lot of the stories to my children. I told Catherine and William, my kids, and they grew up on these stories. And when they went off to college, they said, Mom, people need these stories because they're lost or disconnected. Will you publish them? And so I did. And first I did it as a series of children's books, Sparkle series, and I did a story of becoming. And they were very successful. And I got to learn a lot about the whole publishing process and what's happening in the world, publishing world these days. And a whole group of friends came in that they're really terrific. Now I'm working with people in Prague and South America and all over the world, and publish other people too who are interested in similar subjects. And so it's been really fun. And what I've found is that people absolutely love Celtic stories. They can't get enough. And so I've been sharing them on podcasts like this one, and people have been buying the books. Heroines of Avalon just won 7 literary awards, which is great. And so I think the time, the goddess, for the heroine, for finding these parts of ourselves that were almost lost. They're revealing themselves like little diamonds and jewels again, and now we can pluck them and put them back into our hearts, you know. And we can live in a way that's empowered and not cruel, you know, a way that's kind and intelligent. That's what the woman really does.
Yeah, I think that for myself, I'm definitely my friends are tapping into myself, and I am tapping into the feminine energy, but we don't know what to do with it. You know, it's like, okay, that's great, but then we hide it in our purse, or we hide it when we walk into the boardroom, or we hide it when we talk to a business meeting. And we don't know how to stay connected to that inside the boardroom, or stay connected to that. And I think that's something I'm learning. You know, I'm definitely learning that process. Is something that, you know, I have to, like you, I have to go outside of my family and go outside. And so your books showing up were just, you know, perfect timing, and I highly suggest them. I'm going to read it against the Legends of the Grail, the one I have in front of me right now. Legends of the Grail, Stories of Celtic Goddesses by Ayn Cates Sullivan, PhD, doctor. And I do love the fact, you know, that you have gone out there and you have got yourself educated and Ivy League educated. And I think that is important, and that you're coming back around, taking that business side of you, as well as bringing in the goddesses up to the forefront. That's a pretty big deal coming from the Ivy League. And you understand that it's very patriarchal in those specific spaces still today. And I come from a view personally that I don't want to beat the feminine over the head of the patriarchal, like sometimes people do recently with, you know, politics and things like that. They're like, you know, I don't think that's what it's about. It's like there's a rising, but again, I'm not sure what the answer is. I think I'm trying to discover what that answer is. And I think that your stories of the goddesses is helping that process. So I just want to acknowledge you for that.
So I'm working on a book right now called King's Heroes and the Goddess of Sovereignty. And it's actually on that subject. Hopefully it'll be out next year. But it's really about Camelot and what Camelot is. And so in the age of King Arthur, an author can appear in every age. There probably is a King Arthur even now, whether we know him or not. But Arthur is the king who wants peace and unity among the people. Like, Arthur always has to be with the queen, the May Queen, and they have to be in balance and harmony together, right? And there's usually a lady of the lake also holds sword power. She's holding, and the woman is actually responsible for handing the masculine his power. Now, if that gets out of balance, in the stories, and the man grabs the sword before it's his time, or woman, but if a man, then what you do is you create the wasteland. Everything goes into despair. The weather goes wrong. You get hurricanes and tornadoes and floods. You get all sorts of, plagues and problems. The whole land despairs. Everything's out of balance. And why? Because the man is using his sword incorrectly. And he needs to turn back to the goddess of sovereignty. And it's the woman's job to teach the masculine how to rule well. And that's where we've gone that's what's gone wrong. And so we're in the wasteland, and the way out is to learn how to wield our sword correctly, wield the power. And that's the power of the mind, and it's also respect. So we have to come back to the round table, and we have to understand that each person holds a specific place. We have to understand what it is and how we do. That's also a boardroom. Camelot. Camelot's also a boardroom. This is how the kingship is run. But it has to be run correctly. And the only way a boardroom of any type is run correctly is if the masculine and feminine energies are completely in balance in ourselves and within each other. Yeah.
I love that. The boardroom is really what do you call it? The king's what? The Camelot?
The round table.
The round table.
Camelot. It's the round table. It's the round table. And when it goes well, when the masculine and the feminine energies are working harmoniously together, the land thrives and there's abundance for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we don't do that, then we experience poverty and despair and terrible earth changes.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to go back to that model. It's very important to look at again. And there's a reason that story has been told for 2,000 years.
Which story?
The story of King Arthur and the Round Table, but it's even more ancient than that. It is even more ancient. It has to do with the goddess of sovereignty herself, and that the feminine is actually the earth, and the earth has to be in right relationship with the king, with the rulers. And if a ruler is arrogant and out of integrity and thinks that they can dominate the feminine, the world despairs. The men themselves fail. They fail. They become cruel, and they become insensitive, and they destroy everything around them, right? And so that's where we are right now. We're in the wasteland. And so we have to remember the stories, like when we're in the wasteland, how do we find our way back out? And that's actually at that point in the old Grail stories, that's the quest for the Grail. That's when they ride out of Camelot because they know something's missing. What's missing? The feminine. And they have to ride out and find it. The knights have to find it. They know the goddess has been lost, and they have to go and find her again. And when they find those qualities, when they find those archetypes, and we're with then we have peace, you see. So that the leaders such as that story very well, John F. Kennedy. I mean, there's stories that are known by the royal family in Britain, and people know this, and they know when they've gone out of alignment. Okay, I have to go find they're called finding the hallows. I have to go find my hallow. And so I move back into right relationship. And so, if you are in right relationship with yourself, a boardroom, you're probably going to create connection with others, right? and they're gonna notice something about you, and they're gonna want what you have. Oh, she's got a sparkle. Oh, she's really intelligent. Oh, I want this. You know, so.
Nice. Well, wow, that's pretty impressive. I just want to say, where can people find you? The book Legends of the Grail, Stories of Celtic Goddesses by Ayn Cates Sullivan. Where can they find you personally?
Easy to find on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or most mom and pop bookstores, or you can find me on my website, AnnCatesSullivan.com, or my publishing company is InfiniteLightPublishing.com. So I hope you'll read, enjoy, and be inspired.
Okay, that's infinitelightpublishing.com and AnnCatesSullivan.com. Well, again, Ann, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for doing what it took to get these stories out back into the world of the goddesses. And again, this is Heather Havenwood. Check us out. Again, you can find Ann at infinitelightpublishing.com. This is Heather Havenwood. Check us out at heatherhavenwood.com, as well as Alexa. I always want to say that she starts talking. iTunes, Amazon, and Google Play. This is Heather Havenwood. Bye.